Hello, good evening, and welcome back to Elisava's Master's Talks. It is my pleasure today to introduce Morag Myerscough. I will explain a little bit about her bio and professional trajectory very shortly, and I will leave Morag alone. Okay, so Morag was born in Holloway in London in 1963. And shouldn't I say that? I'm sorry. Wrong way to start. I'm sorry. Okay, forget the number. Well, she explains that she was born in a bohemian environment. Her father was a musician. Is a musician? No. Was. And her mother, textile artist. Then she studied in Central St. Martin's in London, and afterwards at the Royal College of Arts. She also taught or are teaching in St. Martin's.
I taught a lot.
Okay. In her projects, well, I don't know if I should call you an artist or designer, both. Okay. As far as I don't say the birth year, right? All right. So in her projects, she integrates graphics and type within very varied environments: architectural environments, public space, exhibitions, installations, in interior spaces like hospitals, schools, etc. So she works on very, very different formats, which go from furniture to public space installations and a lot of formats in between. Sometimes in collaboration with Luke Morgan, sometimes in collaboration with others, but few of the most relevant projects have been developed with Luke Morgan. One of her milestone projects in her career was the Temple of Agape, sorry, which was built for the Festival of Love on London's South Bank in 2014. Yeah, you will see, she has a very strong visual approach. Although we should not call this a style, but more a kind of language, which actually is developed in a very site-specific logic. So even if the language is very present, the way in which the projects are developed is very site-specific, related with the context, like the geographical context, the physical context, but also the social context. Yeah, she often works with community groups. So that's a part of this site-specific work, where the community gets involved in the process, and most of the work comes out of this dialogue with the community. I don't know if you will agree, but that your work is influenced by a variety of styles and movements, but especially the energy and radical free expression design that dates from the 60s.
Yeah.
That's why.
So I think can't get away from that.
It's a loop.
Absolutely.
Okay, and she also said, I also read that you relation productive collaborations and trust, and one example of this is this supergroup dynamics, which is a loose network of creatives that sometimes work together if there is an opportunity for in a project to get together and work. So thank you very much, Morag. I leave you alone.
Thank you. Okay, you can hear me, yeah? Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the other people in the other room as well. And I'm so glad I matched the furniture. That's good. Okay, so sit back. I'm going to talk a lot, and I'm going to try and get it in an hour, but I've been told that if I don't, that's all right, but you might not think it is. But, okay, so I'm going to start with this obsession that I've got at the moment, which is looking and seeing the difference. And I think in these times that we live in where we're just bombarded with things that we do look at, but do we actually really see anything? What do we see? And so this has sort of been very interesting for me for a while, and I think that it's about, we really need to think about this. So I travel a lot, and you can take things so easily on face value. So this was in Saudi, and I thought, oh, isn't that nice? Natural stone. And, oh, they've done stripes. That's nice, isn't it? I wonder why they did stripes. And I just would have taken that as being a sort of a graphic at a pattern. But actually, the reason that they do stripes, though, is because they have white goats and black goats, and then they alternate the white and the black, and then the stripes just happen for that reason. And I felt that meant, that said something to me. And then I've just been out in Chile, and there's this bit, I did actually write his name down, Roberto Hernandez, and this is a gallery that he started. He lives in this neighborhood that was going to be knocked down, and they were going to build high-rises, but the neighborhood had a vibrancy about it, but it was pretty slum. And then he had this idea to do this gallery in the sky, gallery outside, museum in the sky. And so he got all these artists. This one was actually done a very long time ago. This was the very first one in the 70s. But these recent ones, he did this idea, I think in 2008, and he got all these sides, he got all the people living in these low-rises to have art put on the sides of their buildings. And then, and this is him, Roberto, and this is his wife. And this is the amazing, vibrant market that now is in the neighborhood. And so these were the condition of the houses that they were all living in, and they were going to be, condemned. And so by putting these artworks in, he managed to get the government to change their attitude towards this neighborhood and to give them money to each of the blocks would have to put an argument forward to the government to refurbish, these people haven't done it yet, to refurbish their blocks. And so then they've got the government to refurbish the blocks, and they've got this art, and now they're doing all these little gardens and things. And it's just I would have, if I hadn't been taken around this project, I would have just thought, oh, that's nice street art, that's good, that brightening up the place. But actually, it made a massive, massive difference to the area, and it saved that neighbourhood. And now everybody is very proud of the neighbourhood, and they want to make it better. And it wasn't loads of money either. So, and this is another thing. Now, this is my suitcases, and I had this idea where I have all my clothes, and I put them in the thing, and then I wondered one day, do my clothes connect with my work or not? And so when I go away, I always put a certain capsule. I mean, I've got too many clothes, so it has to be only when I go away, when I put a sort of capsule of things together. And then I realised, yes, they do, and I'm going to put each suitcase with the work I'm doing at the time. But when I put that on Instagram, somebody thought I was showing how to tidy your suitcase. And they said, oh, you've been looking at that Mary, what's her name? And I said, no, that's not it. So it's that sort of thing that there can be so many more levels than you imagine. And I was asked, there were a group of delegates came to London, and they came to my studio. And one of the groups were from Mexico. I didn't know at the time, but I said, I always really wanted to go to South America. And then they rang me in January, and they said, oh, Morag, we've got this project. Would you like to do a big installation in Mexico City? And I was like, yes, definitely. I really want to go to Mexico. I'd never been to any of South America, so it was amazing. And I do, this is my wall in my house. This is Luke's work, but this is my stuff. And I like collecting bits from all over the place. Luke does the pictures of me. I don't put the pictures of myself up on our sideboard. They're birthday presents. But I have this sort of weird collection of things. And so the idea of the project is they wanted to do something about iterations, do a piece of work about iterations. And I hate iterations. I hate having to redo. So I said, well, I don't really think that's not the way I work. I think what I'd like to do is get everybody to re-look at things. So to look at somewhere as if you'd never seen it before, as if you were a child, as if it was the first time you visited. And I wanted to try and give that to the people of Mexico. So they said, all right then, Morag, that's okay. And then they said to me, well, where would you like to do it? So there was one space that was next to an art gallery, and then there was this space here. If you're familiar with Mexico, this is Zocalo Square, the most important square in the whole of Mexico. And I went, oh, that looks nice. Yeah, I'll have that one then. So they said, okay, Morag, you want that one? And I said, yeah, it looks like a nice big space. I like that. And so they managed to get all the permissions because it was really, really difficult. And then because I was working with this amazing group of people, young designers who'd been in various parts of Europe and then had gone back home to set up this design week, they helped make it happen. And they asked me to position the piece of work at the end of the longest road in Mexico City. So I wanted to make people re-look at things, and how can I do that? And I grew up with this book, Ways of Seeing, but to be honest, I've tried to read it, I don't understand it, but I like the title. And I remember that film thinking, oh, camera obscura, it would be really amazing, that's a really interesting way about how to look at the world again, and also it's very simple. So I really wanted to make one like that one that had a lens. So when we were in Mexico, we tried everywhere, we couldn't get the lens. So in the end, we did a pinhole camera. So we had the really basic principle of making an image through a hole. And these were the original sketches for the piece. And then this is the final piece. So this is the hole, and there was a hole on the other side. And because they couldn't afford to send me out to Mexico, so we did everything via Skype. So they took these videos of what you could see inside. Honestly, you couldn't see anything at all. And I was like, oh, well, okay. We'll just have to go with it. We'll have to see, because obviously, if you're using a pinhole camera, you're dependent on no clouds, you're dependent on the light. And I just thought, well, they're convinced it's going to work, so we're going to make it. We're going to make it work. So we made this piece in the middle of Zocalo Square, and it was just really amazing. Just because in Mexico, people don't want to go to galleries. They want to, but because this was outside and it was free and there was no expectations. People just queued and queued to go inside. They didn't know what was inside. They just wanted to queue, which I thought was such an amazing curiosity of everybody. And then when they got inside, what was so brilliant about the organisers is they had a very authoritative guy, who told everybody the story of film and camera and making images. And people couldn't believe that the camera on your phone it comes from this principle. They didn't know that. And there were some quite important people who came round to the beginning of the festival, and they were like going, oh, it's in colour? And it's like, yeah. You have to make black and white. And it moves. Yeah, because you're actually just taking what's outside in. So this is what you actually saw. So it took a little while for your eyes to change, to adjust. And then inside you would be able to see this. And it was amazing, the clarity. And everybody, and I just wanted it was just a notion that people could just see things in a different way, and it's upside down, and they'd re-look at their city and afresh. And then, interesting, this was, if you look at it, you think, because Zocalo Square is the Aztec historical site, so you would think that my piece was referencing that, but actually I feel embarrassed because I didn't realise that it was. And I didn't have any reference like that. This was just the work I was doing. So, but in a way, I quite like that accidentally happened. And I also love this juxtaposition of the colour in the middle of the space. But what was really good for the festival is that they got the government, because the government were a bit unsure about the festival, you know, what direction it was going. And then when they saw this massive, great big thing in the middle of the square and people were coming to it, they did then this massive government day where we all had to shake everybody's hands. And then for me, that was great then. For the festival, I managed to get them to get a different a different view on the festival, and they moved to another stage. And this was called Mira Iber as well. So these are just carrying on with the looking and seeing. These are just some pieces I've carried on doing, and I'm just always fascinating and playing around, and I think it's good to play around. This is a piece of Olympus. So, finding belonging. So the title of the talk is Making Belonging. But I think for me, I had to learn how to see things. It took me a really long time to really realise what I should be seeing rather than I actually had been. And sometimes when you've got, so this is me, London born, London bred until I die, and then I'm dead. And I feel very lucky that I was brought up in London. And this is my interesting, eclectic family. So this is my great-grandfather, who was English. He was brought up in a workhouse, so he was a sort of pauper, and then left there and joined the circus. And he was in a couple of circuses in France. This one was the last one in Paris and in Belgium. And then he met my great-grandmother, who ran away to the circus. She was German, and she couldn't do anything, so I'll show you what job she got. And then this is them. Time wasn't too good on them. But then they came and lived in Holloway, and that is the house my family have lived in for 130 years. But now everybody's died, and we're going to have to sell the house, which is sad. And this is my great-grandfather, my French grandfather, who was a salon painter in Paris. And that's my dad. And I think that's maybe why I like condensed type. That's my dad's name. At the top, I always loved that photograph, and I think that's stayed with me. So this was my grandmother's job, which I only realised when I watched a film called Carnival that she did. I thought she was a high diver, so I thought she did sort of trapeze, but she didn't. She did this. This isn't her. I think to take that on as your job, that's a pretty brave woman. So I think that I come from quite a sort of brave strength of strong women in our family, because I think that must have been the shortest straw at the circus to do, don't you think? Jump in a pool of water that big. So this is our house that we've lived in, the whole generations and generations have lived here. And this is my French grandmother. And why this is really important to me is because my French grandmother lived in her own fantasy world. we lived in working class Holloway. In those days, it was really grim. And so the houses looked nice there, but it wasn't. It was all tenemented, except for a few houses. And my grandmother came from a very elegant her father was a painter, French family, and she came to this hideous place in London. And so she got all her relatives to decorate her house as if this was a French salon, She wanted to live elegantly. She designed hats. She helped make and design hats with Hartnell's, who was the hat designer for the Queen at that time. And when she went home, she wanted to live her life that she believed that was right for her. And I think that that's an amazing way of being, making your own world for yourself, even within limited means, really. And then next door, my mum was a bit more modern, and we used to go off on space. We used to have this cardboard spaceship that I really liked, and we used to go on all adventures. And so I think, in a way, my grandmother was it was on her, she had her own adventure, her own glamour that she wanted to live, almost exactly like a child, So I think things about making spaces for people just definitely comes from how I was brought up. But I did come from this particular family that didn't fit in London at that time. And when I got older, I didn't fit in very well. And then it took me quite a long time, really, to find out what belonging meant to me. And so when, if you've come from a very close family and you leave it, where are you? How do you find your new place? And so anyway, I realised that probably for me it wasn't about children and it wasn't about that sort of thing, but it was about, because I was a middle child, I never had any space, it was about space. And I finally, in my early 40s, found this building, and I walked in that building and I just thought, oh my God, this is it. This is where I belong. This is the space for me. And so this is upstairs. I live upstairs from my studio, and this is upstairs in my house. And then down in my studio, this is my space. And then Luke, who I live with, he has another studio at the back there. And so sometimes I work with Luke. This is my old dog, Lemmy, who died, but I've got a new one now. So don't get upset. Exactly the same, but smaller. You'll see him at the end. He's called Elvis. He was Lemmy. And so there's just me and him, and that's why I'm happy, and I listen to Radio 4, and then I work with Luke on certain projects, and then, actually I put this in the wrong order, but I'll come back to that. Oh, let me come back to one. And then sometimes, when I work on really big projects...
That girl I've seen, she's on my TV screen. You know my TV screen. You know the Six Show.
And so, oh, can I go backwards? Oh, where am I not be able to go backwards? Oh no, I'm going forwards. Oh no, I've gone pear-shaped. Wait a minute, let me go back. Yeah, here we are. Okay. And so then I get loads of people in, but because I am old, I don't like people around me all the time. So I only like people sometimes and not all the time. So then I do big projects and I think, oh, that's nice, nobody around, just me and the dog. And Luke comes in and out. And then when we travel, we often just meet a whole load of group of people who've never made anything before, and then we don't always know what we've got when we get there. So this place, we didn't have much. We just had some rulers and some things you'll see, and we made this installation in 9 days. So we went to Melbourne, and it was in the summer, and I was in a black shed for 8 days, and then I came home. And that's it. I was that let out one. We've done that one. Oh, and now we're going back to that one. Yeah, okay. So from finding how I know what works for me, and somebody sent me something recently, there's things about belonging to, belonging with, there's all forms of belonging, and I want to discover, can I make a piece of work that truly does belong to other people, not just me thinking, oh, isn't that nice, we're working together, does it actually belong to them? And I have a real obsession with bandstands, and I like the film Top Hat. And so I really love this film. It makes me cry. I've seen it a million times. And I just love the idea of bandstands because they're public spaces. They're for everybody to use at any time of the day. You could do anything. And so I spent about 3 years trying to get somebody to let me make a bandstand, unsuccessfully. So I did all my research on the bandstands. I made bandstands. I made all sorts of bits of bandstands and roofs, and I nearly got this project through, and then it didn't happen. And then I was asked just to go and visit this gallery in Ditchling, and it's where Eric Gill, there's lots of bad things about Eric Gill, but it was where Eric Gill lived. That's why there's a museum there, and it's an arts and craft area in the UK, in sort of down towards Brighton. And the director there really liked my work, and he said to me, Morag, what would you, if you wanted to do anything, what would you want to do? And I said, I want to make a belonging bandstand. So he said, well, that works out really well because we're thinking about doing an exhibition with Carita Kent's work. And this is where I realised I'd only looked at Carita Kent's work and I had not actually thought very carefully about her work. So I'd only seen her work in 2007 and I really liked it. But I don't think I really read the words. But I like the colours and I like the typography, and I thought it was good. And it was interesting. She's a nun. And she was friends with Eames, but she was an educator. So I said, oh, yeah, I'd like to do a project that is connected to Carita Kent. So I thought, I better go and do my homework. So I read all these books that were written about her. But then I found this book, and I really advise you all to buy this book. It's not very expensive. And it's about her teaching. It's all, it's sort of, not lessons, but it's, what do you call them? Anyway, something. I can't think of the word. But different lessons, anyway, about how she wants, things for you to try out, workshops and various things. And it's her philosophy on art. And that is where, again, I do come from the 60s. Or maybe I was taught by a lot of people from the 60s, because what she teaches what she says in that book is very much how I was taught when I was young, about how to think and how to see and to be very open-minded, and how she believed that art was for everybody, absolutely everybody. And so when I read this book, I was like, oh my God, assignments. There's lots of assignments in the book. And I thought, oh God, I've got to try and work out with my belonging bandstand how I can incorporate her assignments with the way I do my workshops. And when I read the book, so I'd already been doing my looking and seeing things, and then when I read this, and she wrote this, then I felt, oh my God, we're just like together, aren't we? We're on the same path. And so she did a certain amount of assignments to get, she did workshops with social groups, with very many groups where she would, because she was religious, she would use Bibles and stuff like that. I wouldn't use Bibles, but I just used magazines and papers. And we talked about the subject belonging, and we got all these different groups from community groups. I didn't realise they'd never done workshops before, and they just loved it. And so basically I gave them the subject, they discussed it, and then each group decided what belonging meant to them. So this was a very young group, and their belonging to them was about everybody being together. They've got kids and they all want to be warm and joined together and everything, and it's about family. But this older group, it was about their friends. Their families had left them. They wanted to be their friends were more important to them in the community group, and they were building different communities. So it was just great working with it, learning what belonging means to different groups. And then what they did is they edited all their type. They told me the words that meant to them. So this was one group, this was another group. That's Hangleton, and that's Manor. And this was more of a sports-based community group, so they said which colours they liked and stuff. And then I drew up each of these. I drew the placards for them because they didn't want to make the placards themselves. They wanted it to look, really good. They didn't want it just to be sort of trying to do art or design. So I made them for them. And then, sorry, this is another thing from Sister Creta. So she did actually stop being a nun after a while because the Catholic Church was really against her. But she still had amazing belief. And so when we were in Brighton, I managed to work with Brighton University, and they helped me paint all the placards. So these are all the placards. And then when the bandstand went round, each group, when it went to each community group, their placards came to the front of the bandstand. But we had really tight budget, and nobody else left to do it. So I painted all the main part of the bandstand, and just in the way I do things. And so there was a combination of the two groups. And this is the piece. So this is it on Brighton Beach, and it was a crown of messages from each of the community groups. And this was it out on the beach. And each group put performances on. And then, as I said, it can be used at any time. But this is the one that meant the most to me. So this was in a council estate, in a housing estate, and this is the social club. And they did really great theatre stuff in there, but the people were scared to go in. And then suddenly we put this bandstand outside, and everybody gravitated towards the bandstand. They all started chatting with each other. They were all like, can we keep the bandstand? And I said, no, because it's a bit like, I'm definitely, my work is definitely influenced by the circus, because it was definitely a bit more like, this is the fair ground, the circus has come to town, and it's there and it's exciting, but it shouldn't stay there. It should go away, and then something new should come. But it brought people together, and it really taught me a lot that it worked. It meant that what I had in my head had worked. And then moving on from that, I was asked to. My mum died 2 years ago at Christmas, and my mum and dad met in Aberdeen. I've never been to Aberdeen in Scotland. It's quite a granite, it's a really grey town. And then in March of the year my mum died 2017, in March that year, they called me from Aberdeen. And they said, Morag, do you want to do a project in Aberdeen? I thought, that's really weird. I wouldn't exist if my mum and dad hadn't met. And, and it was quite big because my dad had, I'm an orphan now. My dad and mum that was the end. And so then I thought, no, you know what, I'm going to go and do this project. And so this is the first time my dad met my mum up in Scotland, top of the stairs, love at first sight. Brought her down to London, tried to impress her, then got married in Scotland, and then there's me and my sister. My sister first, then me. And then she never got away from London. But my dad, so it was a really emotional thing. And I was sort of not sure, would I do something not about my parents? And then I collaborated with this amazing Doric poet, so there's a language up in Scotland that's sort of lost. It's not slang, but it's old language that now has been revived, and they're writing poems. And so I worked with this wonderful poet, Jo Gilbert. And when we were discussing, she was like going, well, the story of your parents is so amazing. My dad was on a ballet tour with the Royal Ballet. My mum was teaching at Gray's School of Art my dad saw on the top of the stairs, and then that is it. They were married, they ended up together. And the People Look Again Festival had given me this site, which was a meeting place. It was a market cross. And so they wanted me to make a site-specific work. And so actually everything just came together to do something about first meeting, and then also related to my parents, which was really, really seemed right. And so Joe Gilbert wrote a poem in Doric about my parents' meeting, and then we also did workshops with the community, and they wrote why they loved Aberdeen and what Aberdeen meant to them. And so and then because of time, and I couldn't stay in Aberdeen and paint it, I think we in the end we realised something like 120 people helped build this piece. So I drew everything up and I went and showed people how to paint, and then there were these two amazing girls and they ran the workshops, and then for 3 weeks everybody painted the installation and everybody got involved, mums and dads, everybody got involved, and this was the piece they painted. I don't think anybody realised quite how big it was because I give it to people in a sort of jigsaw so they don't get too scared. And this was a piece, and it was just felt so amazing working with the community. And also I realised that my mother's Scottish, but I always felt like I came from London. But then when I went up to Aberdeen, I realised that I'm a lot more Scottish than I thought I was and how we all really related. And women in Scotland are super strong as well. And it was nearly all women who made this happen. All women, actually. And so this is the piece. So it's on 2 levels. So there were many layers to this piece where it was about looking at the city and seeing the city, and then looking at from different angles, and then inside about really re-looking at that monument. And then the poem, Dear Aberdeen, that I was given. So originally I had this romantic idea that I would make all these signs, and then the poem they gave me was like 700 words or something, and I would never be able to do it. So I just said, okay, I'm going to paint. This is really out my comfort zone, going to paint on site. So then I went and painted the whole piece on site. And then I painted these in the studio. So the inside is wrapped with the poem, and then this is the city, the poem about Aberdeen. And then you can walk all the way around. So you're really re-looking at the architecture of that cross, which is very historical, and then giving a new space. There were performances as well. So there were poetry performances. And then what was really lovely, it went full circle, is my mother. So you can see where I get my colour. Well, my mum's colour changed a bit, I think. My mum's colour went a bit like my colour, but anyway, won't say that. It's not fair. But my mum, this is my mum's work. So we put an exhibition of my mum's work, some of the pieces, more recent pieces. And so there was my mum's exhibition and our exhibition. So it was a very emotional time. My sister came up as well. So making things last, right? So this is a really interesting thing, because for a very long time, doing temporary projects is really cool, isn't it? It's really great. You redevelop spaces, you change people's perceptions of spaces, but they're not there for very long. And then what do you do with everything afterwards? Because it could be there for 3 months, you could build like nearly a whole massive structure, and then what, it gets thrown away? So this took us like weeks, 4 weeks to paint. And then at the very end of it, the South Bank said to me, well, we don't have anywhere to store it. We're just going to throw it. I was like, you're going to throw it? Blood, sweat and tears. You know, it's like, you're going to throw that? There's no way you're going to throw that. So I collected it all, and I still have a lot of it. And I bought a storage space. I rented a storage space, and I collected. Some people wanted the word love. Some people who worked at the South Bank, they just wanted the loves. They didn't want anything else. And I just collected all the pieces, and I have it in storage. And actually, I'm doing and I've collected say for example the bandstand, all the placards went back to everybody, but the parts of the bandstand nobody wanted them, and so I got them. So I am planning next year, I'm doing an exhibition where I'm using all that stuff to rebuild, to make a new project. But why I use scaffolding a lot is because, and I think you call it layer, but it is because it is rented and you can put it back and it is back in the system. You're not got loads of metal structure you've got to get rid of. So for me, it's very, very important that when the work goes away, it finds a home. And I spend a lot of time, I talk with a lot of the people who are doing the projects with, where is that piece of work going to go? Totally dismantled, that's not a problem. Not in its entirety. These are just temporary. So all these temporary projects, but when you do temporary, interestingly, people think you can't do permanent. This was a peace pavilion. Nobody used to notice this sculpture, but when we covered her up, everybody was like, why have you covered up the sculpture? It was really funny. These, I just want to go through these quickly just to show temporary pieces and then how you can activate places. This was in the city. And it was a response to the bombings and everything that we had in London. But that makes it look like we had nice weather that year. It rained all summer. It rained the whole of the summer, and it was a real shame. But we reused, this is in a school nearby, and we reused all these, all the panels, and everything was reused as much as possible. Because I do think we are responsible for making things, putting things out there, and I think we should be responsible and be careful about what decisions we make, what materials we use. I'm guilty of many things, so I'm not saying that I'm getting it right, but I'm trying to do things in certain ways that are better than maybe I would have done in the past. I don't use aerosols. I've always, partly because that's more I was worried about my own chest, but I use water-based paints. And I think that's really important also for the people who work with you. I don't want to put them in danger either. I don't want everybody to go, oh, isn't that great, let's make this thing, and then they all use spray paints and then get chest problems. It's not good. This was a crazy one in LA where I went out there and I thought they would give me some people to help, but nobody in LA wants to work out in the sun. So then I managed to get one woman and her daughter help me paint, and we had like 7 days to build this massive piece. And again, just, drawing circles with pieces of string and things. And then this was the final piece. And honestly, that year, that was 2017, that nearly killed me that year, those projects. It was too much. So now I don't do as much as that. That was just too much work. That was like all painted in 7 days and with just 3 of us. But, I'm glad I did it. This was interesting to show how things don't change. This was a piece I did in 1993 in the city in colours, and it was in the papers that it was too bright and they were going to pull it down because the colours were too bright. So it shows how the world has changed, that you can't get bright enough now. You can use as many colours as you like. And then, but it shows good ideas are the best ideas, because when I worked on the Design Museum, instead of making it just out of triangles, I did the same idea but with a tri-wall. So it's an advertising tri-wall at the Design Museum. And sometimes you fail. Sometimes you just can't get things to happen. This was a project that meant masses to me, and I worked on it for 2 years in Finsbury Park, up the road from where I was brought up in Holloway. And you can see how grim it is. It's one of the most grimmest areas. And I was given an art project to light and refurbish these bridges. And I worked with masses of community groups, and we put all these patterns together, and it was this amazing piece. And then the word together, I tried to work with poets, but in the end, I came up with the word together, because from coming from that area, I realized that actually what was so brilliant is we all lived together, all in maybe not all in harmony, but we did live together, and it was pretty good. And then, we've got a lot of problems at the moment in the UK, but with government changes and various things, there was one councillor, one woman, and she didn't like pink. She thought pink was too feminine, and she didn't like it. So when there was a moment she had a chance, she stopped it. And she didn't care anything about the effect of that on the communities or anything. She just decided no, because she didn't like pink. It was years of work. Anyway. But sometimes you don't get what you want. It doesn't happen. And even the money's in place, it still doesn't happen. So that was originally going to be my big permanent piece in the city. And then I was then given another permanent piece. So this is an iconic building, Battersea Power Station in London. And there used to be the Festival of Britain. This is before my time. But my uncle did win the violin prize for the Festival of Britain. And there was amazing buildings and things. It was like when Britain came out of the war, and it was exciting. And this was the pleasure garden. I mean, this could be now. It's really exciting, isn't it? I've only seen bits of pictures, but like crazy installations, I never saw it. And so I was asked, and this is inside, these are the doors inside Battersea Power Station. So in this one, I wanted to make a piece. I just did a sketch, and I wanted to connect to all the history around there. And then I was the first person to do a commission there. So Battersea Power Station, why don't I use the word power? So I was very lucky, I used the word power. And then I tried really hard, because this was a permanent piece. So that's what I was going to talk about, is permanent. That people, because I've only done temporary, people think I can't do permanent. And the thing about permanent, the danger with permanent can absolutely become boring, can't it? Because people think it's permanent. That's good. And they always say to you, but do you think in 25 years people will like that colour? And I was like, I don't know, and I'll probably be dead anyway. I don't know whether they're going to like that colour. You just got to go with it. You've got to risk things. And, if in the end, how long is permanent? I mean, I just worked in Broadgate, the city, where I'm sure they built all those buildings and they thought they were going to be permanent. And 25 years later, they're taking them all down and rebuilding them. So, what does permanent mean? So I don't think you should change your mindset for permanent. I think you should look at the materiality of things, because it's really important that things last. But with this project, it is permanent, and I didn't want to make it myself, and I did want to make it out of wood, so I tried to get a contractor to do it, but all their paint tests were so bad that I just said that I had to do it. So we painted that. This is my happy dance. So we painted the whole thing, but you can see this is the new build. There's lots of controversy about Battersea Power Station. The station behind the thing is in its form. It doesn't have that thing connected to it. It stands as it did in the past. And there's my bit of colour. And these people in here obviously didn't like it, because it's bright. But I don't really care, because I think that it needed that. That was the right thing to put in that space. And so this is it. It's been there 3 years now. These are tiled. And it's there, and it's a landmark now. And I think that's great that they risked it and let me make that piece. Making public. So this is interesting. I just talked to you about Broadgate. So this is Broadgate, very impenetrable. I live in Hoxton. When Broadgate was being built, everybody didn't want it to. So I live in the cool bit, Shoreditch, and then there's the city, and all these big city workers. We didn't want the city workers to come over to where we live. It's like, we don't want them. But now it's changed, and the people from there, Shoreditch, have moved into the city, and the city has changed. So these buildings that were impenetrable are now being opened up, and they're public spaces, and you can go through and you can go and sit in there, and you can have a coffee, or you don't need to have a coffee. It's a public space. And that's what interested me. So I've worked many years with the architects AHMM, and they were trying to do something in this space, and they couldn't quite get it right. And so they said to me, Morag, will you have a go? And Finsbury is called 1 Finsbury Avenue, and where I lived was Finsbury Park, where I showed you that bridge. And there's a tradition in the UK that the parks were built for the city workers to go out and take the air. So what I wanted to do is bring the park into the city, inside. And then these are traditional tiles in Edwardian house. So I wanted to take all the language of that, and this is my backyard, my terrace back garden. So I took all those elements, and then I didn't do this render. I can't do renders. To be honest, I don't like them very much, and I really hate that bit of type there, but it sells the job. And, in the end, if they want to do something that sells my project, I'm okay about that. So, and I wouldn't normally do in a SketchUp and leave it like that. So this is the piece, and then it was I really wanted to make it traditional tiling, not just digitally printed onto larger format tiles. And so this is the final thing where I put one of those, sorry. So I put one of those tri-walls in. So I thought, well, I've used it before, I can use it again, can't I? Why not? Oh, has it gone off? Oh, there we go. Sorry. And then this is a final piece. I mean, it took a year to craft all the tiling, and it was really important to bring all the planting in for fresh air and to make this space truly public. But the biggest controversy is they didn't want my sons. They didn't mind any of it. I mean, it looks quite crazy, but the sons were the thing they didn't want. And so I was like, why are the sons? What's wrong with the sons? And so I just sat there, and they said, look, Morag, we'll let it happen, but not the sons. And I said, no, you can't have the job there. You can't have it. If you don't have the sons, you don't have any of it. And then in the end, they went, yeah, okay then. And I thought, oh my God, why didn't I do that 20 years ago? It's like, it took that long for me to be that strong. Right, I am really behind on time, so I am going to speed up. So this is how detailed the tiling was. This was really stressful this summer. And then we made, so this is Luke, and this is his studio. And we made all the furniture. This is my niece, helped me in the summer. And we made all the furniture in the space in the studio. He made all the furniture, and I had a couple of people help me paint it. And then this was an evening, and I hate the lights. But the idea, I really want to see the space. When I took the photo, it just opened, but I want to see the space with just people using it. And really making it for everybody. And anybody can go in and come in from the cold and just sit in the nice soft furnishing. And I think that's really a way forward. So size does really matter to me, and the bigger the better. And I'm working on this project in Matadero, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, sorry. And Rosa, who I worked with on Big Bang Data, who's now the director at Matadero, asked me to go out there to look at this cafe. And this is the space, and these were our approach to it, so to bring lots of greening in. And she paired us up with this fantastic architect, Paula, who lives in Madrid. So this is the three of us. And this is the space before we started work on it. So this was, you came in and you were faced with this scary wall, which is seating. And so what we decided to do, we had limited budget. And this is sort of, this furniture, I mean, it was a bit grim, it was a bit dirty. And I had my bag stolen. And so we wanted to just really change. The space is incredible, and we wanted to just really change it. So we've reused the seating because it would have been too expensive to remake, but we just clad it with wood. We've hand-painted it. We've made all the furniture. Paula's had it all made in Spain, and then we've had people painting it, and we've just completely changed the environment. We wanted to change the floor and make it all grey. Not possible, but you have to work with the things. And so this, if you go to Madrid, I hope this will be open maybe in the new year. It's been a bit longer project. But the scale of things don't worry me. Now, this is my biggest project to date. It's in Manchester, and this is how big it is. That's quite big. Very exciting. And so I thought, so big graphic on it. And this is an area, this is a developer. It was originally going to be temporary. It's now going to be 10 years. So this is a developer. They want to get people to come to this space, this building through there. It's a very hostile environment, prostitutes and drugs and things, and so we need to sort of change people's perceptions of it. So this is the working ideas at the moment that are going to develop a bit, but not the main bit that's going to be developing is the big installation in the middle. This is all happening. So we're just changing the space and we're changing people's perception of this area in Manchester. But it's really important. We're working with a guy from Manchester. It's really, really important that we work with, in this context, because I come from London as well, that in Manchester we're working with people in Manchester so that we really work from the ground with people to make a piece of work that they really want in their city. And it's definitely about growing and letting the place sort of evolve over time. So united by pattern. God, I've been so slow with this talk. Sorry. I haven't got halfway through. Don't worry, you're not going to stay here forever. So this was a wonderful project in Austria where it was about. There's a very big divide in Graz in Austria where the migratory, different cultures don't mix. And this Dear Bicker Hips Arts Festival really wanted to have the theme of bringing everybody together. So they asked us if we wanted to do this project. It was called Open Doors. And again, I worked with lots of different communities. These young guys, we had to pay them. They were really funny. Because they're like teenage boys, and these are schools. But the one who ran the main teenage boy, he did this one. It was very delicate. So so I took their patterns. They did their patterns, and I made them into banners along the street. And we really brought everybody together. But what was so brilliant about this project, it was with a gallery as well. And the people made recipes, and they shared their recipes. And everybody just came in, and there was music and festival, and it was just fantastic, and it was on for about 3 months. And it just really brought the community together. And then the panels of that were given away to everybody. Now, Finding Magic, this is really, really poignant project. It's really beautiful. We had Grenfell that was burnt down. This was pre-Grenfell, and there's a big debate at the moment about people being told to stay in their flats when there's a fire. That's what the firemen say, and this is what these people did, and they died in their flats. So in this estate, Sue Estate, there's a South London gallery, there's a gallery connected to it, and they set up an arts club for the kids. And I'm not going to pay all of this, but I'm going to pay a bit of it. And I was the first artist to work with the young people. So this is a really exciting day. As you can hear, there's lots of people doing art. I'm Morag Myerscough, I'm a designer and artist. And at the moment, I'm at the opening of the art block.
Very pleased to welcome you to this celebration of the opening of Art Block. Art Block is part of Open Plan, which is a bigger programme played out across 3 estates, local to South London Gallery, with the aim of bringing artists into the everyday life of residents, but also with the aim of involving residents more in the life of the South London Gallery.
It's a new art block where the kids can come and just do art, make things and just enjoy themselves. They had had a space that they had made their own, and it was an amazing identity, little small space. And then they were given this wonderful new space. It was a white-walled new building that it didn't belong to them. So the whole part of my brief was to come and make a space that they belonged to. So the way I approached that was to get them to make the art So I did workshops with them, pattern workshops, word workshops and various things. And then out of it, I took their work and then I transformed it into the space that you can see now.
My name is Kudauda and I'm 9 years old. At one of the workshops I did a little bit of art and we had to design our own kind of like picture. So there was kind of shapes and we had to make our own picture out of it. The thing that I like about the new place is that the new place is big because the old place was too small for me to dance, but now the big space is better for me to do that. And there's lots of different colours on the walls.
My project is named The Club Under My House, and we got that from one of the workshops with the young people where we had a poet that came in and he worked with them.
What is this place?
Maybe it will be the art club.
A club, okay. Do you want to write that down? A club under your house. I like that. If you had a club under your house, what would that club be?
So it goes on a little bit longer, but you can watch it. You can see all the other artists who have done the work in the gallery as well, in the space, and it's really amazing. And then it's also good, sometimes people just ask me, will I do something, and I help this group. It's a temporary garden, but it's now a sort of permanent garden, and they had this little theatre space, and they asked me would I work with them, and so we just all painted it and made this space. So it doesn't have to cost that much money, but can make a big difference. So making home. So I've worked in schools, so I've done a lot of different things, and I've worked a lot in schools, and they've won quite a lot of awards and things, but what I found from working in those spaces is actually if you get the right formula, you get the right teachers, the right architect, and everybody works together, you can really make these spaces that really change people and change the grades. The grades in 2 of the schools have improved massively from changing schools. So this was one that I won the Sterling Award with the architects. But in hospitals, it's more complex. And I think I've worked on many different types of projects in hospitals, but the one that feels the most close to my heart is Sheffield's Children's Hospitals, the bedrooms. And so this is Avanti architects who designed these bedrooms, very, very neat and very good, you know, less scary without so many wires and everything. But they were pretty cold. And so there was a commission, there was Kat Powell, who is the commissioner of Sheffield Children's Hospital, art commissioner, asked me would I take on these bedrooms. So I did all these designs and I went up to Sheffield and there was the clinical staff and I presented to them and they're really nice to me. And I was pushing them a little bit and then the next day, they were all nice, and then the next day, Kat rang me up and said, they thought you were really nice, Morag, but there's no way you're going to do those bedrooms because they were too extreme and I was going to give children, you know, they were going to be unwell from being in my rooms. And so I thought, okay, wait a minute, I think maybe it's the way I presented to them. You know, you imagine you're a nurse, then you're put in a room with some crazy woman who's got a screen with lots of coloured things on 2 dimensions, and how are you going to translate that into a kid's bedroom? And if all your job is, if the whole thing about your job is the welfare of those children, you're going to say no. So I had to think really carefully about how I know what I was trying to do. I know where I was coming from. I wanted to make a home from home. I wanted to make a warm space. It was for all age of children, so I didn't want to put Disney or cartoon or anything. It was from all ages up to 16, and then they go into the adult wards. So I thought, well, I'm going to make a model. So I made these 4 models. I edited what I'd shown because I'd overwhelmed them. I made the 4 models. I sent them up. I wasn't there. And then they showed them to the staff and to the patients and everything. And you can see 92% said yes. And such a turnaround. And so I went back up there. And then in the end, the nurses said to me, the one thing that we need is we need some blue rooms because blue is seen as calming. I have have certain views on what colour means and does, but anyway, they are, people believe blue is the best colour. And so if I make 6 rooms, when the kids are really, really sedated or whatever, and they wake up, then they can be in those rooms, and then later on they can move into the brighter colours. So I said, yeah, of course, that's great. There were 48 rooms. And so this is now the bedrooms. I didn't put the teddy on the picture. Not my styling. And so it is a wood laminate, but the wood was really important to me to make it softer and to make it warm. And also, it was interesting, the architects had a slightly darker grey floor, and I just switched the grey, changed the colour on the floor, and then suddenly the room had a lot more light in it as well by just changing the colour just fractionally. And then I've managed to get them to do these disposable curtains in these vibrant colours, and they love it. And they've been open now for a year, and people are getting better quicker. Because the staff, and I went round there recently, the staff are happy to be in there. The doctors, the doctors and the nurses are happy to be in there. The parents are happy to be in there. And it shows that the hospital cares. And because the hospital cares, then those people feel that people care about them, and it makes them feel better. And it does prove that, design and art can actually make things better. So, but on top of that, this is a thing about brands. I'm asked a lot about doing brands, and you've got to be really careful. If you're doing social projects and you do like Coca-Cola, that's not going to work, is it? So Methods are a eco-cleaning product. They asked me, would I do the project with them? And I thought, yeah, that's okay. And they said, could I do it with the Children's Hospital? Then they ran out of time. Then I did the project. But then I said to them, if I do the project, will you give me some money to build the garden at the hospital? And they said, yeah, okay. So they gave me, so this is the terrace that they ran out of money, NHS, in this hospital. I didn't do this, the architects did that. But it was sort of left, apart from that, this is pretty grim, isn't it? And so I managed to give me £45,000 to make that garden, to build that garden. And then I also did a project in London. This was one I did in Leeds, but I did this, that's not meant to be on there, sorry. I did this project in London where all these floors were all made and everything. These are crossings. They were at London Bridge, and then they were stopped, but they were made. So I asked them, will you give me those? And can I put them in? And they said yes. I asked the people to commission them because they were going to be thrown away. And then this is what I'm making in that. This is what the kids are going to get. It's not in the bedrooms, you see. I'm allowed to do what I want outside. And so I think I'm going to... I totally talk too much. It's an hour now. So I can stop. You want me to carry on? I'm going to miss... You want me to carry on, you sure? It's like an epic. I'm going to go quicker, though. Okay, so mood and colour. So interesting that those hospital projects are very much about the patient. And this one is a big corridor in Sweden, and it was, sorry, I always get that wrong. It was connecting, it's 200 metres long, and it connects a new part of the building with an old part of the building, and that's been refurbished now. And I was given this commission, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And at the time, I was collecting I was writing colours in my tweets. I just spoke in colour. And if you download your tweets, this is what they look like, very nice. I love a bit of concrete poetry and stuff, so that's pretty nice. So then I thought what I would do is, I did 3 tweets a day, and one of them was my mood, what I felt in the morning and what I felt at night. And if you try and do that, it's quite hard to think about that in colour, what each colour means to you. I never actually wrote down what they were, so I'm not sure now if I think the same as I did then. But anyway, but I knew that, I think you can guess that black probably wasn't a very good day. And so then I I worked it out. This is like a year of colour. Because I wanted to make the 200 metres a year. And I felt that even though it was my moods, I think when you go to hospital, your mood can be one and swing another way and change another way. And it wasn't necessary, nobody needs to even know they're my moods. It's just the fact that you can connect to the colours in whatever way you want. But what I realised, it's not as simple as one colour in the middle and one colour at night. So then I decided to make it in triangles so that it's more interconnecting and it was more complex. This is my old dog, Lemmy. And that's how long a year is in paper. I could only take it once because he never did it like that again. And then this was us painting. I had people painting that with me, and all the colours, like masses of colours. It was over 2 years. I didn't do it two bursts of 4 weeks over 2 years because they had to wait and build the other part of the hospital. But this is what the hospital looked like before. And this is a final thing, but there were people who were really anti me doing this, access people, site people, and I had a group of people, and they came, and one woman really wanted to get rid of it, but the people, the partially sighted people said that there was nothing wrong with my wall, the problem was the signage. So I was like, yes, so the woman was a bit upset, but and also I managed to get wood. This is real wood. It took a really long time for me to work out how to do it. This is real wood in hospital as well. And this is all completely hand-painted, all done like a jigsaw. And it was really wonderful to see the reaction, because a white wall is nice, and I like white walls. But once this was put in, the whole atmosphere of the hospital changed. It just warmed up, and everybody was commenting about the colours and how, it made them feel better and how actually they hated the white walls, etc. And this is how long it is. It's quite long. Oops. Oh, God. Oh, no, I'm always going the wrong way. We are near the end now, actually. We're just seeing... If I really thought about doing something, I wouldn't do it. I just do it. I just agree to it. Anyway, it goes on and on and on and on. So I do think remember to play is really important. And I think Carita Kent's letting yourself go free, playing around until something comes is often very hard. And I do... Because for me, especially, I was given so many rules that I was meant to keep to and do. To free yourself up is very, very hard. And I think it's really, really important to do it. And today, I have had a block with a project I'm doing in Paris. And then I was on the plane, and I got my sketchbook out. And this is just why you've got to play.
Yeah.
I got my sketchbook out.
That's so great. Okay. Keep going. Well, so you can actually stop. Oh. But you're in the right position, and I come across. Okay,
I don't come across. It takes too long.
Yeah, and then you can stop, and the start can become like Adventure Time. Like, oh yeah, because you can see all your little legs. This is me. Okay. So get.
Anyway, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I think you've just it sometimes things become too serious, and you've just got to play with things and. You've got to let yourself go, and you've got to surprise yourself. So on the plane today, I just couldn't get this thing, and then I was doing some sketches, and then I thought, yeah, okay, now I understand, because I was I was in a different space, and it made me think differently. But this was a big piece in South Africa, in Cape Town, and this was only for 3 days. So I was petrified about this being thrown away, not the structure that was going back, but all this. And so there were these amazing people, Seesaw Do. If you think about the lack of materials in townships and everything in South Africa, in Cape Town, you can't just make something and then throw it away. So they took all my pieces, they did whatever they wanted with them, they put them all in this library that had been burnt down and rebuilt, they'd made playgrounds with them, they'd made furniture, and that is just amazing. So then I met this there on the line, I think from South Africa, Sean and Sebastian, hello, and the Ikalu tribe. And so then Sean asked me, would I work on a project for Africa Burn? So that was my original sketch, and then this is the sketch for this. And they just made this render. So this is the piece. They've been working, they're an amazing team of people, and they've been working on it for 2 years, and they're totally making it happen themselves. It's like Burning Man. They made clothes, apparel. I've never had clothes made of my stuff, but these to raise money, because they're raising money to do the project. And then they've all been painting. They send me all these pictures, and it's amazing how much hard work they're doing. And if anybody wants to go out to Africa Burn, I'm sure they'd be happy you join the tribe and help them paint as well. So this is a project where, in a way, it's quite weird. We just sort of I've drawn all these up as artwork, panels and stuff, but then we just handed to them, and they're just going with it. And it's quite exciting, and I'm really excited that it happens. And then the same Seesaw Do people, they put this proposal together about what they're going to do with the pieces afterwards. It's called the Temple of Curiosity. And so this is nothing to do with me. They do what they want, and I think that's fantastic. And so I'll end on my mantra: make happy those who are near, and those who are far will come. And I am going out to Hong Kong next week. And there's a lot of disruption in Hong Kong at the moment, and I was this is a Chinese proverb, and I was a bit nervous whether this would be the right proverb to use, but everybody felt that was good. And I think it is really important to look after the people around you and make sure that their lives are good. And so this is the piece, and I'm working with the digital designers who are making a big installation inside. So when people just come in, because smiling, is really important in life, and it lets out endorphins, and, you feel good from smiling. And I think if you can make work that makes people smile, then, that's not bad. And so this is the piece, the drawing of the piece. And this is, I actually don't quite, I keep on asking them to show me progress of building. But this is all done to scale, and can be dismantled. It's done in SketchUp. But I don't quite think, I won't know what it's actually going to be like until I get there. So I hope, they're telling me it's going to be exactly as I have drawn up. So I hope so. And they are really beautiful people that we're working with. So just ending on, there's little Elvis. So I used to watch the Monkeys as well. So sorry, everybody, that's the longest talk I've done for a really long time. I'm sorry. I get a bit carried away. I'm a bit like, I love the stage.
Thank you, Morag. I know that probably from the other room they are seeing you
does it have to come on? Oh.
Vale. Okay, so there are questions.
Hello, thank you for that. I was going to ask, how early on in your career was it that you started making everything 3D? Was it from the beginning, or did it kind of progress?
Yeah, so when I was at the Royal College, I designed opposites. That was my final show, but everybody I was doing graphic art and design, and everybody else was designing posters. So they got really, really worried that I would never get a job, and that I should be designing posters. So I think I felt that I had been doing something a bit wrong. So then I went out and I set up my studio, but then I always designed exhibitions, and then I did big, massive wayfinding, and then I started doing narratives with architects. But at that time, it was, everybody was very separated out, and so it took a really long time until I really felt totally, well, the first big structure I made was 2012, so it took a long time. That's only 7 years ago, independently. You know, because people would always think I needed an architect or I needed a thing, and then I had to prove to people that I didn't, and I could do that all I could do it myself. But I like collaborating as well.
More questions?
Hi.
Hello.
I have a question. Have you ever been compelled to do anything in black or white?
Yeah, black and white, yes.
Strictly black and white?
Yes, yeah, I love black and white. I'm not so crazy on grey. But I do have a dark grey bedroom, actually, that's completely grey curtains all the way round. So black and white would be easy, yeah. I haven't... I have done some things. I did a stripy installation, black and white. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Más preguntas? More questions?
Hi, Morag. Thank you. Well, I know your work since 2013, and since I saw them the first time, it never left my mind. I always saw it. But I wanted to ask, because you have a very unique style or language, as you said before. How did you find your own voice, your own expression? Was it because you always had it inside, or is it the sum of different things that you have done in your life?
I think I definitely always had it inside, and the model, when I went into the temporary bit and I showed the model of the Movement Cafe, that was in 2012, I was asked to make this piece, and maybe I was unsure about my own, how strong I was myself, and I was a bit scared and been putting off. And then I saw the person who commissioned me, and he said to me, if you don't do that design, if you don't come up with a concept by tomorrow, you're not going to have that project. So I went home, and then suddenly from nowhere, I don't know where, I just made that model. I just made it. And then I looked at it, and I thought, oh, wow, okay. And then I showed it, and then they said, yeah, just make it. So then we had 3 weeks to make it, and then that was really the moment. So I think I'd been waiting all that time. And then when I did the temple was a whole other thing where that had, until I built it, I didn't realise that there were all thoughts from various, maybe I'd been in a temple, maybe, light, the way light came into space, and I just, again, made that happen. So I started, whereas before, when I did wayfinding and I designed exhibitions, it was very from here. And now everything comes from here, maybe from my toes or something. But it takes a really long time to come out. But when I design, I can design really, really fast. If I sit in a meeting and I listen to all the people and I think about all the things, then I can respond really quickly. But when I'm doing this other work, it comes from a very, very different part of my brain. So I don't really know that part of my brain. I know another part of my brain. So that's why sometimes very hard, like this piece I'm doing in Paris, it has to come from, it's not happening yet. It's still not quite there yet. But it will happen, hopefully, by tomorrow.
Thank you.
But what I wanted to say, though, is you can do more than one thing, though. So you can think one way for one thing and one way for another thing. You don't have to just think one way. Because I think I was taught that you should only be linear and that makes you stronger. But I don't necessarily believe that anymore.
again. I'm not going to ask you about your birth.
Oh, not birthday.
No, I'm kind of curious because listening to you when you explain your projects, it feels like you have a very intuitive approach to projects. But at some point, it looks also like there is a very kind of systematic methodology when you look at the results. So how would you explain that?
Do you mean because of the systems? Because to make the thing you have to...
Well, I mean, the language is quite clear and explicit that it is very strong in your project. So somehow it's the way in which you express is very structured. But at the same time, the approach to projects seems very intuitive.
Yeah, I do feel more and more I had to have an emotional connection with the work. And so when I can't find an emotional connection with the work, that's difficult. But also, because people think that I'm quite messy, or it's all a bit this and it's that, but I'm very, very structured as well. And I do lots of systems, and I make everything foolproof so that people can do it. So again, that's other parts, using different parts of your brain. But what I realise is if you let a bit of your brain go away for a little while, it's very, very hard to find it again. So if you ask me now, because I used to do massive wayfinding projects, if you ask me to do a wayfinding project, I'm not sure if I would know how to do it. I mean, I'd have to like really get the cogs, because my brain has gone somewhere, slightly different. I'm not sure if that answered, but. Also, when I was young, being in the graphics world was a very male-orientated as well. And it wasn't a time where really you were meant to show your personality particularly. And so that's why I call my company Studio Myerscough, because I never wanted anybody to know I was a woman or I was on my own. And obviously that was good because people used to think loads of people worked for me. But that was also bad because people didn't know that I was the person who did the studio. Because I met somebody once and he goes, "Oh, who are you?" And I said my name with my surname. And he said, "Oh, who do you work for?" And I said, "Studio Myerscough." He went, "Oh, Studio Myerscough." I was like, "Yeah, that's my company." But it's fine. So I think that's another thing. I think that I wish in some ways I'd been stronger as a woman. I was strong in many ways, but maybe not enough about being a woman, in the environment that I was in.
Okay, hello. Since color is such an important element in your language, so how do you approach it in your life and in your work? Like, what does color mean to you?
Well, I suppose it means everything to me, really. Because colour is in people, I think that was the whole thing about my family. It was so colourful in every level, with music, with everything, with conversation, with things. And maybe I've replaced all that with using strong colour in things, because I think it is a conversation, it is a way of changing. I'm not a musician, and that's my form of expression. I see colour definitely when I put it in. I love really, really stark urban environments. I love brutalist architecture. I love really austere things. And my most favourite thing is somebody to ask me to put a piece of work. That's like with just that big expanse of Zocola Square, to put a piece of work on some tarmac that's got grey all around. Because if you put my work in a supermarket or a shopping centre, I mean, it's not going to hold out because there's too much interference. So, and I sort of see it like, we love flowers in nature, don't we? We love colours, we love bougainvillea, we love the naturalness of all those colours, and And I just see these installations, because also they don't last often that long, that they just come up like a whole field of flowers, and then they go, you know, they go away, and then they may come up again somewhere else.
Thank you.
More questions? Preguntas?
Hello. We both are quite curious to know if you have any dream project or like a project of your life that if it come true, you could be really happy.
Yeah, I'm often asked a dream project, but I don't know if I know what my dream is. Things happen unexpectedly, and then I realise that maybe that, like the Temple of Agape, I didn't know that would mean so much to me. So, I mean, at the moment, the tile one, I'd always wanted to do tiles. I really wanted to do a permanent thing. I wanted to do one with all those connections. So, but at the moment, I think because I've gone through, I'm working on this big project at the moment, I'm not sure, I haven't got one at the moment. But maybe I'd like to make a permanent 3D structure that people could go into, you know, that it could be a space. I'm not saying I want to make a building, I'm not saying that. I want to make a structure.
Thank you.
Why it's important for you to be, that it's hand-painted or done by hand? Because it could be produced in an industrial
Digitally.
way. Yeah.
Sometimes, interestingly, with Super Hot that I showed you, that was made in Romania, and they did digitally print and paint. I couldn't be there. But the reason I do like painting, and that's what I'm really excited about the project in Manchester now, because originally that project was going to be made very fast. We were going to have big fabricators in, they were all going to make it. But this project's changed, it's slower now. So we're going to get the community, they're going to help build it, make it. And if you get people involved with the painting, the hand painting, and they can see that they've built this building, then they know how now to paint in that way, which isn't very difficult, it's quite easy. But, and also they've invested into that place, and it's their place, and they'll want to make it work. And so, and I think I have a real thing about textures and that it's real wood and it's hand painted. But people say to me, because I am so obsessed with, so basically, when I was at St Martin's on foundation, all I was made to do was use gouache and lay it flat, and I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? I am never going to do this ever in my whole life. And it was like, you've got to get that right. And I was like, really? And now all I do is lay flat colour. And it's like, what? How crazy is that? But I love it, you know, I love it absolutely. Because people say, why don't you use vinyl? Because the edges have to be absolutely perfect and everything is perfect. And the more layers of paint you put on, the richer and the deeper the colour is. And, you know, and I just love that idea that from not very much, not a big massive machine, not from any, just from a few pots of paint and a bit of a pen and a thing, you can make a massive, great big thing. As a community, you can make that thing, you know, and you don't need loads of money, and you know. So there's many reasons, but and I like painting as well.
Thank you. ¿Más preguntas? I think we make you talk enough for
No,
today.
well, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.